Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, in gray today, which I think is kind of cool. How's everybody doing? Sorry we missed you last week. I was really under the weather there for a fair amount of that week, so we were late on the some of the shows and stuff, but sorry about that. But in any event, here we are back again. Good to see everybody. Just a couple little things, I guess. First of all, we have a guest from Ottawa, and welcome. It's a beautiful city. The Parliament building there looks like it was designed by Walt Disney, and I mean that in the best possible way. It's just it was a lovely place. Hey, Foghorn. So welcome. Let's see. A couple of other things. I saw somebody mention that they were watching the elephant sketch with Tim Conway, and just a little bit about that. I was talking with Scott about this, and we said, the thing about Tim Conway was he was just so clean, and I don't mean clean in kind of like the way that like no foul language or anything. I mean the humor was just so innocent and obviously this is just me. There's a lot of times that Tim Conway made me laugh, but it really was his interaction with Harvey Korman that to me was just I just couldn't bear it. I saw an interview where Harvey was talking about that. Tim and Harvey were being interviewed, and Harvey said, that people like to see that, but they can tell if it's real or not. And I completely agree with that. There's no way you could do that on purpose and have it work. It just wouldn't. The chemistry between those two guys and the love between those two guys was just great. I think Harvey Korman is a really undervalued comedy genius. I just loved him. I loved him. Everything he did, I just was just crazy about it. I just loved that super affected kind of toffee-nosed kind of guy that he played in Blazing Saddles and just did so often. But in any event, Tim Conway was amazing. And I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but when I heard that Tim Conway had died, I was really shocked because I had thought he had died 10 years ago. I did one of the first radio shows it might have been the first radio show I ever did. So this has got to be about 2007 or 8, was his son, Tim Conway Jr., and Hedley Lamar. And I didn't think his dad was alive then. So, the sad part about it is obviously he'd been suffering from dementia for quite a long time. And anybody who's been through that knows what that's like. It is a long, slow goodbye. And it's, in the case of my mom, it was something that got worse and worse and worse. She's still with us physically. It got worse and worse and worse, and then suddenly got much better. There was a period there where she was remembering just some really awful things from her childhood, and then when I saw her last time, it was a little over a year ago, I guess, got a chance to talk. She got a chance to meet my wife, Natasha, which I was very, very happy about, both ways. Natasha points out to me that when I walked into the room, she recognized me for about 2 seconds, lit up for about 2 seconds, and then basically became a very happy, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. It's a tough thing. The Alzheimer's is tough. Starts off as just mildly annoying and then somewhat annoying, and then heartbreaking. But the dementia is gut-wrenching. It's just horrifying. It's just really, really, really bad. And then at least for me, it got to be considerably better. I hope that was the case for Tim. And in any event, it's amazing, to be able to leave a legacy like that, make a mark like that. The other thing about Tim Conway and Carol Burnett, I just wanted to briefly touch on, because I've talked about this a few times. I'm obviously pretty hard on millennials and stuff, but I mean this without any rancor at all. I do really feel sorry for them in one sense, and that is that this is the first generation, and pretty much all of them will be the same in the future, like the millennials. But the millennials were first, that didn't have like the communal pop culture experiences that we had. When I was talking with Steve and Scott about Tim Conway, and those of you who saw the members only episode that went up, I think we made it public, about Tim Conway, and we were talking about the elephant sketch and the way he couldn't get through. Because the thing about Tim Conway, watching him with Harvey Korman, was that Harvey was just breaking up all the time. So was everybody else. Tim had just speaking as a person who's been on stage and done a little bit of acting, a little tiny bit of comedy. The Tim Conway's level of control was really amazing. But I feel sorry for millennials, because when the Carol Burnett show was on, I want to say it was a Sunday night, but I don't remember. It seems like it'd be about that. But in any event, the entire country was watching at the same time. I mean, all of it. Kids were watching, and then parents were watching, and grandparents were watching, and we did it pretty much at the same time. Yes, they did a lot of their sketches. D.P. Wellman says they did the sketch twice. They did it. They did it twice. They did a dress rehearsal, which they taped, and strangely enough, you would think that the dress rehearsal would be the one where they would experiment, but what they wanted to do was do the dress rehearsal as straight as they could, so that they had a usable, airable show in the can, and then they'd go a little nuts on the one that they actually filmed to release for TV. And the other sketch I put on there was a sketch where is one of the very few times I saw Tim Conway just absolutely just lose it. Saying it's in the Afterburner. If you haven't seen it, I hate to spoil it for you, but it's such a quick joke. He's talking about they're fishing for a shark in a bathtub, and he says he knew this woman who was off in a boat and tried to swim to shore, and she got about 40 yards offshore, and she got taken by a great white, and he says she would have made it too if only she hadn't been wearing her lucky ham. And that's a brilliant joke. It's a brilliant joke, and he just plain lost it. The version I saw first was the version that was airable, where he just barely managed to choke it out. But on the first take, he just started like crying. He was laughing so hard. That kind of joke, by the way, is really just really fun. I love these left field, kind of elegantly structured jokes where you just get something that you're just not expecting at all. Anyway, he was a really good guy, and the country, in a lot of ways, was better than, in some ways, worse. We concentrating too much sometimes. I do on the the good old days and stuff. There was a lot about the 70s that was better than today, and some that wasn't. But thank you, Victoria. I'm doing fine, thank you. I feel sorry for them, and the best way to compare this, to compare what I'm saying is, if you look at the Dean Martin roasts versus the ones that they did on Comedy Central, there are two fundamental, enormous, glaring differences between the two. The first one is the Dean Martin roasts, the people who were up on the dais, they were like legends. Not just the people being honored, but I mean the panels were legends. You know, you would have Jimmy Stewart, Ronald Reagan, Frank Sinatra. Well, needless to say, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis. By far my favorite. I think the funniest man I ever saw in my life ever, Foster Brooks, and and they were just and Rickles, obviously, Rickles, but they were just monumental people that were up there. And the thing about it was that you could tell that the jokes that they were pulling on each other were really, that there was really a lot of love underneath that, and you could feel it. One of my favorites, it's a little tiny one. Certainly wasn't one of the funniest moments, but I remember the roast of Don Rickles. Bob Newhart came out and did a segment. Bob Newhart and Don Rickles were best friends, and the great thing about the roast was it ends up with the person who's been skewered for the last 2 hours gets a chance to take shots back. And Don Rickles got up and said, Bob Newhart talked about our time together as friends. I have never met Bob Newhart, and it's just great. Now, if you compare that with the MTV ones fairly recently, you see two things that are really shocking. First of all, the people there are just, exceedingly trivial people. Sarah Silverman, and maybe you might get Patton Oswalt, but you get, mostly these shock comics. And so the actual quality of the people there is lower, and the people that they're honoring is lower. I mean, they roasted Ronald Reagan on the old days of Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Stewart, Frank Sinatra, legends. And you find yourself roasting, Flava Flav or I don't know, Shatner. But the most important difference is that was that they just didn't know each other. Forget didn't like each other. They just would come out and say really, really offensive things about people they didn't know, they'd never met. It was almost like a random insult comic kind of thing. Speaking of insult comics, by the way, I think, oh my God. I hate it when I just blank out like this. Sorry. It's like it's right on your tongue. And then it just doesn't show up. Triumph. I remember Insult Comic Dog, but Triumph the Insult Comic Dog makes me laugh a lot. Anyway, so yeah, I feel sorry for them because it was just so much more communal, so much more shared, and it was really just a lot of fun, and really just I don't know, I miss it, and I don't think young people appreciate the sense of community. That sense of not just the community of the people up on the stage on the roast, but the community of having the whole country watching the same stuff, regardless of what your politics were. This is what you watch because that's pretty much all there was. Anyway, so fair sailing, Tim, and thanks for the laughs. And if there's a good place to go to, I'm sure you're headed to it.